This is episode number 136 of the Guns Magazine podcast. Hi there, and welcome to the Guns Magazine podcast. I'm your host and the editor of Guns Magazine, Brent Wheat. Thanks for joining us as we talk to the interesting folks who make up the world of shooting, hunting, and the firearms industry. But first, before we get started, let's have a quick chat about our sponsor, Luth-AR. Luth-AR is home of MBA buttstocks, which are affordable, lightweight, fully adjustable buttstocks for your AR-15 fixed and collapsible rifles. But that's not all. Luth-AR is your one-stop shop for build kits, replacement parts, and custom accessories, including the chubby grip, palm handguards, oversized switch safety, and paddle bolt catch. Luth-AR is proudly made in the USA, and with 4 decades of experience, they'll continue their mission of innovate to dominate with high-quality products for your ARs. Find out more at luthar.com. In today's episode, we're going to go inside the world of gun publishing to talk about censorship. It's been happening for years, but after the latest school shooting tragedy, many gun magazines, including ours, have been pulled off the shelf in this latest round of virtue signaling by corporations. My guest today is Randy Molde. He happens to be my boss and the president of PDC, Publishers Development Corporation, which is the parent company of Guns and American Handgunner magazines and several other titles. Randy's been in the industry for nearly 40 years, and he gives his insights on private censorship, shadow banning, and all the other ways that the progressives are trying to destroy your ability to read about and enjoy firearms. Now here's Randy Molde. Well, good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Well, normally I just address my guests, but since you are my boss, you are the big boss, I have to say, sir.
I don't know about that. I was thinking maybe you're reaching to the bottom of the barrel and it's like the only guy left is me.
Not at all. No, you are the perfect guest to discuss our topic today. You are the president of Publishers Development Corporation, which is the owners of Guns Magazine, American Handgunner, AmericanCop.com, and Shooting Industry Magazine. And you've been in the industry a long, long time. How long have you been in the gun publishing business?
It'll be 38 years in August.
Wow. So you speak from experience.
Yeah, I know where all the bodies are buried and all the implements that put them there.
Yeah. Well, we're kind of going to talk about that today. We got some unwelcome news last week. You were on vacation and you found this out, but the cancel culture has struck again, and not just struck us, struck all of our colleagues in the entire industry, in the publishing industry, and it's basically censorship rears its head again. We had the terrible tragedy, the shooting in, I believe it's Uvalde is how you say it, Texas, and in response, several chains decided that if we take gun magazines off the stands, that'll make the world a safer place. So you got notified by our distributor that people are pulling us off the shelves. And did they just call you and tell you straight out?
Pretty much. They do everything by email now, but it's just one of those frustrating attacks again on our freedom. You know, it's they go after the things that people won't notice, they think. And it's just the little things, and they keep adding up. So not only is it an attack on our Second Amendment rights again, but, you know, they're going after our First Amendment rights. And We're seeing that all the time through the social media. And now we're seeing it, you know, on the physical print media, which is disturbing. It's very frustrating.
Well, I've told several people that, you know, the world will be a safer place now that folks can't read about the 1920 Savage in Guns Magazine. You know, it's just, it makes no sense. But then again, you know, these are the folks that if they think gun control works, go to downtown Chicago. You know, if laws like that worked, you know, it wouldn't be a problem. But anyway, so we've been told in my particular case, it was double-digit reduction in newsstand. I mean, business-wise, bottom line, how's this going to affect us?
Well, most of our sales come from the subscribers, from subscription copies. So it's not going to be a huge hit, but it does affect, you know, our visibility. And it does affect the bottom line because we still have a lot of people that enjoy print, and for whatever reason, they don't like to subscribe. It might be a privacy thing where they like going to the store and buying it rather than having their mailman and their neighbors and everybody read it first. So it's a convenience for them. And, they're at the store, they pick up a gallon of milk, a loaf of bread, and a copy of Guns Magazine. And now they'll go there and no Guns Magazine.
Yeah.
So I feel for them. It's frustrating. But, hopefully we'll be able to convert them to subscribers.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I want to highlight, it's not just us. They didn't just pull us. They just pulled gun magazines, period, off the shelves. And explain how that works a little bit. I think most folks don't really understand how a magazine shows up on your shelves down at the Five and Dime. Nowadays, it's pretty much one company nationwide actually takes those from the printer and takes them to the store. But explain a little bit how that works.
Yeah, we've got major magazine distributor. Most of the companies do, and it goes through the distributor down to the wholesalers, and then the wholesalers out to the retailer. So it's like nearest thing I can compare it to is like a private UPS delivery. They take it to each one of the stores on their route, and they're bundled up, and then they go out and put them on the newsstands and make them all look all pretty. But it's something that the wholesalers work really hard to get them in the stores. It's a long process to go through to even get a title on the newsstand shelves. So once they get pulled off, it's very difficult to get it back on because you have to go through a lot of processes and through different channels, all the way up to the president who signs off. Yeah, we'll go ahead and take Guns Magazine.
Yeah, it's a highly competitive thing. I mean, shelf space is limited, and nowadays it's even more limited. And we're literally fighting to get that 9x12 space on each shelf.
Yeah, and it's shrinking. You walk in any store now, and you have to really hunt for the magazine section. I went to 5 different stores yesterday afternoon, just looking to see where we are and how we're represented. And it was difficult just finding the newsstands, much less finding our titles. The one exception is like Barnes and Noble. I mean, they have a great magazine section with just several aisles full of magazines, and they're very well displayed. But you go to a grocer now, and good luck. You can find Good Housekeeping and all those other things, but finding a title you actually want to read is difficult.
In the big picture of this, who makes these decisions? I know whether we name them or not, some of the national chains, well, my local grocery store pulled us completely off the shelf. Who makes those kind of decisions?
It's they say it comes from the people going into their stores and complaining about magazine titles. Oh, we don't want this gun magazine title on our newsstand. Can you pull it? I don't think that happens very much, honestly. I think it's, more of the liberal policies from the presidents of these companies are looking and seeing, and maybe they get a complaint from a manager. And then they just decide, oh, well, this is good store policy. We're just going to pull them all off. Who needs to read about gun magazine? We're just contributing to the violence. And, that's the kind of thing that just shocks me, that they actually think that this would somehow, contribute to a shooting.
Yeah. Well, in our case, Guns has already been through this once. We got pulled off the shelves. For example, my local grocery store, my own magazine is not there, but Tom McHale, my associate over the editor at American Handgunner, his magazine's there, and of course I always make sure it's prominently displayed on the magazine rack. But of course everybody's gone now. But yeah, Guns went through this a couple of years ago, and it was the same bunch of BS virtue signaling. Talk about that whole how this all started.
Yeah, it was back in March of 2018. Guns Magazine and several of the other competitors got pulled, basically for allowing guns in advertisements. Yeah. So if you had an AR, MSR platform anywhere in the magazine or in an advertisement, you got yanked. And it was primarily the Kroger brands. So all of those brands decided, hey, we're not going to carry those titles anymore. We're going to yank them from the shelves.
And I'd like to point out that we've had no murder or mass shooting since that time, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, crazy. So is there any way we as a business can fight back? It's kind of their house, their rules, right?
It is. It does come back down to the people, though. If they get frustrated enough and they enjoy shopping for convenience sake at a Kroger brand or anywhere else, if they go to the manager and say, hey, I used to pick up my gun magazine here. I can't find it anymore. Can you look into maybe bringing that back? If we get enough people to do that, maybe they'll listen. And, that would be one suggestion. The other is, looking for other outlets and supporting those outlets. So if you go to Barnes and Noble or the Albertsons brands or any of if those are closer, they still support gun titles and they're all over the shelves. So I would encourage you to change your shopping habits.
Yep. And it just straight up censorship. That's all it is. Granted, it's their store, their shelves, they can do what they want. But I think as consumers, as you just said, we need to make our preferences known. And unfortunately, we tend to be the silent majority too often.
Yeah. I think the liberals do a much better job of promoting their wants and desires than we do. And I think it's time for us to kind of step up and say, hey, enough is enough. We still enjoy these things. There's no reason to penalize us. Going back to the stores that pulled this off this time, and they're pulling everything off. It's not just guns, titles with AR style weapons. Now it's, if you got a gun in your magazine, they're going to pull you.
Yeah.
And the stores that pull this are Tops, Kroger, Wegmans, Walgreens, Save-On Foods, Raley's, and, the list goes on and on. But, those are the big ones. And Kroger represents quite a few brands.
Yeah. So this isn't just a today problem, and it's not just a newsstand problem. It's a censorship problem. And part B of this whole thing is something we discuss almost literally every day, is the whole big tech banning. And we have websites, we have social media. AmericanCop.com is digital only, internet only. And we face these problems every day. And unfortunately, we can't ever quantify that we're getting shoved aside. It's a term called shadow banning, and it's virtually impossible to prove. But when you look at our content versus maybe a non-firearms content with the same kind of subscription base and all that, we are far behind everybody else. Talk about talk about your worries as the boss of what this means to us or even our competitors as we move forward.
Well, you're constantly concerned about that. And like you said, we have seen it. It's a quiet kind of thing. And they have ways of, just throttling us back, throttling our reach back on the social networks. We've seen it on our YouTube channel. We were one of the early adopters of YouTube several years ago before most other gun companies were even there. So we've had a long presence there. But I think in a way that hurts us because, we've had that early reach and they were easily identifiable. And so they can kind of throttle that back. We have been taken off the air once. That was several years ago. It was put back on. We fought that. Facebook, same difficulties. They won't accept our advertising. YouTube and their AdSense program, they won't accept our advertising. So it's kind of frustrating how they pick and choose, what they want to do. And from the management perspective, we know where the people are going. They're using these social channels. They're using the video channels. And we want to be there and we want to serve our audience just like everybody else wants to serve their audience. But these big tech companies are making it more difficult and, choosing what people see and what they don't see.
Yeah, it's frustrating for us as the people creating that content. We do some pretty good work around here. And some of these things just completely fall flat. And that's kind of the nature of the beast on the internet. Something that was a throwaway may explode, and something that put a lot of time and effort into may not take off. But seeing some of the stuff that we've done just on average never takes off. And if it starts to take off, suddenly it stops taking off. And that can't just be our content.
Yeah, I might be biased, but I think we have, the best talent in the business, and seeing the work that you guys do, I enjoy it. I enjoy watching it myself and sharing it with people. So I know it's good content, and to see the lack of numbers and the lack of reach and some of these other producers and the lack of ability that they have in getting the numbers that they do, it's something that we're struggling with still.
Yeah. Do you ever talk to your cohorts at other companies? There's actually fewer publishing companies left, but of those of us that are still here, do you talk to your cohorts about this?
No, we talk kind of through people. I talk through some of our salespeople who have friends there, and we kind of, just feed off each other that way. But, maybe it's time for all of us to get together and stand up.
I don't think that's a bad idea. I know when we go to media events, manufacturer takes us on a hunt. I love getting there with hanging out with my cohorts at the other big magazines. And we're, it's the end of the day. We've had a great day and we're having some adult beverages and our feet up on the fire ring. And this is the kind of stuff we talk about. And I can say from the editor side of it, everybody's concerned about this. And we've been talking about this for years. It's an endemic problem all across our industry.
Yeah. And you just don't see any let up. And that's the part that's concerning. And then you have a lot of things working against the industry in general anyway, with the rising costs of materials and paper. And then, on the manufacturing side, they have a tough time getting products. So it's kind of all hitting us at once. It's like the perfect storm of just attack after attack.
Yeah.
So we really don't need these attacks by retailers pulling our shelves off, think they're doing their customers a favor when they're not.
Yep. Well, unfortunately, you have a lot of experience with progressive agendas because you live in California. That's where our magazines are based out of. Fortunately, most of us live in free America, but and you live in probably the most conservative part of California, but still you have to deal with this kind of stuff day in and day out. And where I'm at, it's very conservative, and that's what shocks me about our magazines being pulled. But where you're at, this is kind of the way things are, isn't it?
Sadly, it is. But the thing is, somebody's got to be behind the lines to let everybody else know what's happening in enemy territory.
Exactly.
Yeah, it is frustrating because all of our friends and family are very conservative. We're shooters. We enjoy the sport. And most of the people in the area do, and there's a lot of people in California that do. Unfortunately, the strong voices are the ones that get all the press and make all the laws. So you've got the people in LA and in Sacramento and in San Francisco. They control the voice of California, but that really isn't what's happening. You get just a few miles outside the city and there's regular people there, who like guns. And, they're as frustrated as anybody. And that's why you can't understand why these people keep getting elected and getting into office when you've got so many people outside in the urban areas that are very comfortable with their freedoms and are tired of this constant infringement.
That's what kills me in my particular case. I live right next door to Illinois, and as soon as you cross the state line, which is not too far from me, they look the same. They think the same. I mean, they're good folks, but unfortunately, Cook County and the Chicago area controls everything, and there's enough liberals there. They've turned, the entire state of Illinois. Businesses are leaving. Obviously, the gun control situation is insane. Every day the weather forecast in Chicago is light to moderate small arms fire, but yet we seem to keep, the liberals keep talking about, more regulation, but anyway, I'm getting on a soapbox there. But, I think it goes back to the silent majority. We are a silent majority, and yet we don't, when things like this happen, we just go, darn it, and we move on with our lives. And we need to take a playbook from the quote unquote progressives and be heard. And that's just not in our DNA, I don't think.
Yeah. And I don't know what it's going to take to change that. Everybody feels there's some kind of a change coming. Don't know what that looks like or what it is, but we do need to be more vocal on things that bother us. We need to do it respectfully. We need to do it non-violently, but we do need to be heard. And I think that's very important to stand up for, all those people who don't go into schools and do those stupid things. They keep talking about these gun bans and banning, the AR style rifles. I mean, all the millions of people that have these guns that have never done anything unlawful with them.
Yeah.
And that's just what blows me away.
Obviously, there's been a huge shrinkage of the number of titles and publications and big companies. We both know a lot of folks that got a call one day and said, our magazine doesn't exist anymore. Do you think that big contraction of 3, 4, 5 years ago has ceased, or do you think there's enough challenges now that publications that maybe aren't as stable and have the roots like Guns and American Handgunner, do you think we're going to see more going by the wayside?
I think you will see some fall off still. A lot of these other publishers are top heavy. Mm-hmm. And so they have a lot of expenses that we don't have, and they have diversity that actually is hurting them. So, for example, if you're publishing a car magazine and, another magazine that are still doing very well and are not being challenged, and you're also publishing a gun magazine, but you're seeing constant hits on those on the advertising side, on the distribution side, you're likely to pull those titles back or sell them off. And they'll put all that money back into the car magazines or into the money makers. So you will see some fall off. But surprisingly, my trip to the newsstand yesterday, especially at Barnes & Noble, saw that there is a number of gun titles out there, some that I'd never even heard of before. which was really good news. I mean, it was a full shelf full of gun titles.
Excellent.
So that speaks well for us. We need competitors. It keeps us healthy. It keeps them healthy.
Yep.
So we don't want to see our competitors go away. Yeah. We don't want them to do as well as we're doing. But and there might have been a little bit of shuffling at the magazine racks yesterday, where some of the titles were put back, and maybe ours were moved to the front.
Allegedly.
But, I'll deny it.
Yeah.
That was good to see. So, the print industry still is alive and ticking. And, contrary to what you might hear, it's not all about digital. And there's still a lot of people out there who prefer print.
I will say amen to that, because even when I was writing for newspapers years ago, print's dead. And I came on board here and there were still voices saying, print's dead. Well, we're still here. And I think we're still going to be here. There's a visceral, basic need among many people to have printed material in your hand. And I don't think it'll ever go away. But let's wrap this up. You talked a little bit about what can folks do to support our industry. And again, I want to raise the point. This is a cooperation type of industry. We're all on the same page. And I don't look at it, if you buy guns and ammo, you're not going to buy guns or American Handgunner. You can probably buy all three. So I want to see all of us do well. But what can folks do to support our industry that is under such fire right now?
Don't be afraid to speak up. Be proud of what you do. Be proud of the industry. If you read Guns Magazine, don't be afraid to leave it on the table if your neighbors come over.
Yep.
You talk about it. Have you seen this? Get out to the range. Do those things that you continue to love, and don't be belittled by the people that are constantly attacking our industry, and speak up. If you go to a grocery store, you're looking for these titles, tell the manager, hey, I want to see Guns Magazine. I want to see American Handgunner. What's it take to get them on the store shelves? If enough people do that, they might get the attention of the managers and get this stuff back up. And, with all the new gun sales that we had over the last couple of years over the pandemic, there's people that are very interested in guns. And those people need to be educated. And honestly, print titles are the first line for training on that. So we cover a lot of gun safety stuff and first-time gun owner stuff on both our website and, in print. And we help educate the public. We help keep people safe. We constantly talk about the 4 firearm safety rules. So, we need to be our own evangelists and our own ambassadors for guns.
Absolutely. Okay, now here is the ragingly self-promotional part of the show, which I've never done before, but I am so proud to be the editor of Guns Magazine. I still pinch myself literally every day. I stand on the shoulders of giants. And frankly, I don't know why you guys hired me, but I'm doing the best I can. But truly, looking at the people that came before me, we are the oldest newsstand shooting publication. Randy, you're the boss. Talk a little bit about guns and, of course, our friends at American Handgunner and our other properties, Shooting Industry and American Cop. But kind of run folks through that, because I don't want to toot my own horn too loudly, but you sure can.
Well, Guns is very unique, as it really was the very first gun title on the newsstands. So the first gun title was the NRA title, but the Guns Magazine was the very first one to make it on the newsstand way back in 1955. And it came about because we used to publish a magazine called Modern Man, and it was the forerunner to Playboy. And that's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
But one of the
I'm
most
proud of that one too.
One of the most popular sections in Modern Man was that they used to do a semi-annual feature on guns. And the readers would write in saying, hey, we want more of this stuff. We want more of this stuff. So our publisher at the time, George Von Rosen, said, okay, let's take a chance. Let's put out a gun magazine. So January 1955, they published the very first issue of Guns Magazine, put it on the newsstand. And, the rest is history, as they say. And from there, we had a good run. We've always had a good run with the newsstand titles and the subscription titles. But then in about 1976, we saw an opening for, another title possibility, because there was a lot of interest in handguns at the time. So it's, well, what if we put out an all handgun title? And at the time, it was very controversial, because handguns were still, considered, almost like ARs are today.
Yeah.
If you had a handgun, you were only going to kill somebody with it. You couldn't do anything good with it. So
right.
It was a real risk to put out a title, American Handgunner. But we did. It was very well received. It's still, sorry, Brent, but probably our most popular title.
I'll grudgingly agree. For now.
Yeah, for now. But it's been one of those things that's just been very popular. We do it the right way as a publisher. We buy the best paper. We use the best printers. We have the best team of photographers, of editors. You're right there, Brent, and you've been one of the best guns editors we've ever had, and I've seen quite a few.
Shucks. You're setting the bar pretty low, but real briefly, talk about our other two properties that folks may not be aware of.
Yeah, we also do Shooting Industry Magazine, which is actually our second oldest title, and that goes to gun dealers. It's the industry publication that all the manufacturers read, the wholesalers read, distributors read, and the gun dealers use that to make sure that they have the right inventory for their customers, that they know the new products are coming out. And that was put out also in 1955. So we were really looking ahead as to how can we really service the industry. And, that's been a survivor right there with Guns Magazine and continues to thrive after all these years. And the other title is American Cop. We did that in print for almost 10 years. That just got a little bit difficult with budget cutbacks and everything to continue the print side of it, but we revived the digital side of that. It's alive and thriving. We've got a good editor there in Eric Gelhaus, and he's doing a fantastic job of bringing that brand back to the forefront. So we've got a lot of good things going, and we're proud of the team that we have here and the work that we do.
Excellent. So if folks cannot convince that knucklehead store manager to bring back Guns Magazine, how can folks subscribe and all of our web properties?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, Brent. Well, the good thing about print is that it still is a viable product. And if you lay it down on the table and you forget about it for a week, you can just pick it up and keep reading. There's no charging required, no batteries, no cords. It's fully portable. If you drop it on the ground, the worst thing that's going to happen is you might get a dog-eared page. So print is still worthy of your consideration. And, if you want to subscribe, you can go to either one of our websites, gunsmagazine.com or americanhandgunner.com, and just hit the little subscribe button up in the right-hand corner. And that'll take you over to a page where you can get one or either or both. And if you click on I'd like to get both, you can get both Guns and American Handgunner for a year for $22.22. And that's a pretty good deal. It's just a little over $10 a year for each. And you can't do that at the newsstand. So It's a way to say, so long newsstand, I'm just going to subscribe and get it at home and get a very good deal.
Well, I would also be remiss. We do special interest publications. My cohort, Tom McHale, handles all that, and talk a little bit about those because they are wildly popular.
They are. I'm very proud of what Tom has done with those. When I first started, the special editions were just called annuals, and they were basically just regurgitated best of articles through the year of either Guns or Handgunner. And we would just send those out and often get complaints. Well, I just read this in Guns Magazine. Why are you sending it to me again? Well, we're saving money. We don't have to pay a writer to do it again. But he's really taken a step forward in that we don't do that anymore. Everything that you see, almost everything that you see in the titles is new stuff. Occasionally we'll go back to the 50s or 60s and pick up something that's entertaining and put in the title, like, the Old West title or surplus title. But it's relative. But for the most part, it's all new content. It's very well done. And I would put that right up there as far as quality and reader appeal as the regular issues of Guns and American Handgunner. They're that good.
Yep. And where can folks find them?
Yeah, we've got the DIY. When I was at the newsstand yesterday, I saw concealed carry is still on the newsstand. Surplus is on the newsstand. We've got the DIY coming out soon. And we're working on the newest edition of the Old West. And I saw the lineup of titles yesterday, and it's just going to be a really good issue. You're going to have it.
Well, don't tell Tom, but yeah, he does a really good job with those. So how can people find those special interest publications if they're not on the newsstand?
Well, if you go to the websites, go to AmericanHandgunner.com or GunsMagazine.com, click on subscribe. That'll take you to our store page, and then you'll see it there. Just click on store. You'll find all the special editions way back. And if we don't have a print copy of it available. We still have digital copies of it available. You can download it as a PDF. That's fmgpubs.com.
You just told an interesting story yesterday. Apparently there was a scramble. Somebody ordered all of our even previous titles, and you were trying to find copies of them.
Yeah, we've got some diehard fans.
Absolutely.
There's a group of them that anything that we put out, an email, a special edition, or whatever, they've got to have. And a gentleman called a couple of days ago, and they had our circulation director on the line for a good hour or so, wanting to order every special edition we had as far back as she could find. And so she was scrambling the office trying to find those special editions. So
yeah.
We want more people like that.
Yeah. Well, I got to say, when I assumed the throne as editor, it's interesting. We have probably some of the most loyal readers of our magazines I've ever seen in my experience, but they don't tolerate much nonsense. You got to make sure if I miss the thread pitch on a certain part, I'll get 4 letters pointing out that I'm stupid and I missed the thread pitch on that particular part. So, but that's good. Yeah. That keeps us on our toes.
Well, and the funny thing is that, I started way back and we were talking about, what are we going to do to replace these older readers? They're dying off. They're getting old. And now we're the old ones.
Yep.
When you kind of think about it, and we're not going anywhere. And it's funny how it's cyclical, and the baby boomers get older, and the next generation get older, and those people have money, and that's our audience.
Yeah.
They have the money, they have the time, they can go out and buy that fancy 1911 or that fancy bolt action, and that's our readership. Those are the guys that enjoy reading about guns in our titles.
Yep. And I like to say that, especially with my magazine, and I'm sure Tom feels the same way, that, we're not going to attract probably the 22 to 25-year-old. I mean, if we do, that's great. And I'm sure we do have quite a few readers in that age bracket. But I like to think of as folks in their journey of life and their shooting journey, and they get a little more discerning. And now they want to know who, Colonel Whalen was, and learn more about Jeff Cooper, and, learn about that kind of stuff, the 1920 Savage. Then they start like, okay, I can't really find that stuff. Where do I go? And, this magazine has that kind of stuff. And they talk about Elmer Keith and Number 5 and all that kind of stuff. So when you're ready to do the deep dive, when you're ready to go to finishing school or your advanced degree in the shooting arts, we're there for you. And we've still got plenty of other stuff on our websites and all that stuff, even if you're a brand new shooter, but we kind of cover the whole spectrum.
Yeah, we have great storytellers. I mean, we've always had them, and the current crop that we have with Mike Duke Venturino and John Taffin and Will Dabbs. I mean, Will Dabbs is a fan favorite. So if you want to just hear a good story, and it may or may not even be gun related sometimes, but they just are really good stories, and it's still good literature.
Absolutely. Well, Randy, thank you very much for talking to me about this kind of disheartening topic. But like I said, we are the silent majority. We just need to make our voices heard, and people can continue reading good firearms literature. So thank you very much.
You bet.
In closing, let me reiterate the point we discussed several times during this episode with Randy Molde. We are the majority, and we need to make our voices heard regarding the Second Amendment. As gun owners, I know it's not really in our DNA to complain and make noise, but we've got to do it. Otherwise, the fanatics are going to win. And with that, I'd like to thank you for listening to the Guns Magazine podcast. Guns Magazine was first on the newsstand, and today we're bringing you the most interesting chats in the gun world. If you've got any questions or comments about the show, please email me. That would be editor@gunsmagazine.com. Make sure you subscribe to us on your favorite podcast directory, YouTube, and of course, you can always listen at gunsmagazine.com. And while you're online, don't forget to check out our great sister publications, American Handgunner Magazine at AmericanHandgunner.com, AmericanCop.com, and our numerous special editions available for sale on our websites. Most of all, while you're online, I'd also appreciate it if you would share a favorite episode or some kind words on your own social media. Well, that's it for this episode of the Guns Magazine podcast. For the entire staff at FMG Publications, I'm Guns Magazine editor Brent Wheat. Now get out there and get shooting.